Today we're going to look at a story in the book of 2 Chronicles that I find very interesting. 2 Chronicles chapter 14. And it's a short story of King Asa. And King Asa comes from a line of dysfunctional kings, if you will. And Asa is actually a good king. And so we see here in verse 2 of chapter 14, 2 Chronicles, we pick up the story. It says, Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. For he removed the altars of the foreign gods and the high places and broke down the sacred pillars and cut down the wooden images. And he commanded Judah to seek the Lord God of their fathers and to observe the law and the commandment. He also removed the high places and the incense altars from all the cities of Judah, and the kingdom was quiet under him. So Asa took over as the king. And immediately he started a reform in the kingdom, and he got rid of all the idolatrous symbols in all the places of idolatry. And so from that, the Lord blessed him with a quietness during the time that he was reigning as the king. And so it says that there was quiet, the land was quiet. And so then we pick it up in verse 6. And he built fortified cities in Judah, for the land had rest. He had no war in those years because the Lord had given him rest. So we see kind of the reward of Asa with this reform and getting rid of all the idolatry. The Lord gave him rest for some time, 10 years or so. And then we see, interesting, during that time of rest, what Asa did was he started building and fortifying the walls and building the cities and preparing an army, which was an interesting thing to do if you're reigning in a time of rest. He didn't relax. He didn't. What he did was a wise thing as a wise general. He prepared during that time of rest. You know, we're right now living in a time of rest, but we see things are taking place around the world where that rest is about to come to an end. And we should be preparing for the battle as Asa was. And so here in verse 7, we pick it up. Therefore he said to Judah, let us build these cities and make walls around them and towers, gates, and bars, while the land is yet before us. Because we have sought the Lord our God, we have sought him, and he has given us rest on every side. So they built and they prospered. And as Asa had an army of 300,000 from Judah, who carried shields and spears, and from Benjamin 280,000 men who carried shields and drew bows. All these were mighty men of valor. Then Zerah the Ethiopian came out against them with an army of 1,000,000 men and 300 chariots, and he came to Mareshah. So during this time of rest, Asa did the wise thing, and he prepared his armies and built fortified cities. And he had somewhere upwards of 500,000 soldiers or so. But then they encountered trouble with Ethiopia, the Ethiopian king, and they came against them with over 1,000,000 men. So they were outnumbered at least 2-to-1 here. So what did Asa do? Verse 10. Verse 10. So Asa went out against him, and they set the troops in battle array in the valley of Zephtha at Mareshah. And Asa cried out to the Lord his God and said, Lord, it is nothing for you to help, whether with many or with those who have no power. Help us, O Lord our God, for we rest on you, and in your name we go against this multitude. O Lord, you are our God. Do not let man prevail against you. And so here Asa knew what this battle was about. It wasn't about the Ethiopians. It wasn't about Judah. It wasn't about his kingdom. He knew this battle was the Lord's. You know, many times we have battles in our lives, and do we understand that this battle is not ours? Throughout our lives, we go through trouble and battles. These battles are not ours. They belong to the Lord's. And Asa understood that. And so he said, you are our God. Do not let man prevail against you. And so the Lord understood that Asa, as Asa was crying out to him, he wanted the Lord's help. And so in verse 12 it says, so the Lord struck the Ethiopians before Asa and Judah, and the Ethiopians fled. And Asa and the people who were with him pursued them to Gerar. So the Ethiopians were overthrown, and they could not recover, for they were broken before the Lord and his army, and they were carried away very much spoiled. And so as they went to this battle, Asa understood, they were outnumbered 2-1, but Asa understood this battle belonged to the Lord. And so as he gave this battle over to the Lord in prayer, then God was able to deliver him. Many times in our lives we have these battles, and when we give them over to God, when we understand that this is the Lord's battle, we can face that battle already victorious. And then as we jump down in chapter 15, the next chapter, we see something interesting. God says as they defeated the Ethiopians, all the people came from all over. They saw that God was with Asa. And so as they understood God was with Asa, they came from all over to be a part of this kingdom. And then God leaves us with a promise. He says, "But you be strong and do not let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded." When we go through the battles in our life, when we understand these battles are God's, we turn those battles over to Him in prayer, then He will give us the victory. It reminds me of the book of Psalms, chapter 50 and verse 15. It says, God says, "Call upon me in your day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you will glorify me." And this is exactly what happened in 2 Chronicles chapter 14. Asa turned that battle over to him when he was in trouble. God delivered him, and then he glorified God.